Hello, and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel, a clinical hypnotherapist. And I have another clinical hypnotherapist with me today. Welcome, Shelley Knight.
Hello there.
So, you've written this great book called Good Grief, which I think is an encyclopedia of all things grief, life, death, and everything in the middle. Tell us a little bit about it.
Bless you. Yes, it's got a very long full title. It's called Good Grief, the A to Z approach of modern day grief healing. And it's exactly what you said, Anna. It takes you on a journey from, when we're born into this life until when we exit it, when we have these opportunities. I talk about mini death in there. So grief to me is the loss of anything with which we have emotional connection. You don't have to just buy it because someone's died. It can be you've lost your confidence, your way of life, relationship, health, all these things that fall apart for us, especially during the pandemic. And it's just a beautiful book where I talk about the life stages, about mini deaths, about dying, grief, awkwardness around what to say. And it's a real mixed bag. As you say, it's like an encyclopedia. So you'll get like the clinical observations of death, what's happening spiritually. And then at the back, the A to Z part is loads of spiritual tools. There are a few clinical ones in there. I'm a once upon a time nurse. So it does have like talking therapies in there and medication if you need it. But, it's everything, I think, from acupressure through to Z to get better sleep.
What I liked about it is that you talk about in great detail what death is from a physiological perspective, what is happening to the body at the moment of death. And you also talk about I like the way that you talk about the different ways in which people die. And I think it's important because the different ways in which people die have an impact on how we who are living experience the loss. There's a world of difference between somebody dying from a long-term illness and somebody being murdered or an accident or a very quick heart attack. All of those, or suicide, in fact. And I really like the way that you take the time and you explore how the different deaths affect the impact that it has on people. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's actually very important.
So I've read books on grief before because I'm going to be honest, my nursing degree didn't really prepare me for grief. I went into a career in healthcare and there was a lot of death and grief, which wasn't on the syllabus. So I did read, a few books on grief. And I mean, it was 20 years ago, but it was always just death. And, as you said, there's so many ways in which we can die. And how we grieve depends on our coping strategies, how we've seen other people grieve in our life. But then you've got the type of death. So as you said, like, if someone dies of old age, it's still painful, especially if it's our parents and things like that. But there's almost an acceptance around it. We've got this awful saying here in the UK saying they had a good innings, which means they've had a good long life. That's okay. But then I'm quite open that I had a friend that committed suicide or died to suicide. My beautiful stepdad died suddenly of a heart attack out of the blue, so that feels very different. And I think it's important not just to go, oh, you're grieving. It's deeper than that. It's more emotive than that. And I didn't want to, there's no justice. We're just sort of like tarnish everyone with grief, one size fits all, because it's really not. And so to me, it's important. And I start with suicide because it's so taboo and people don't talk about it. But people are, dying to suicide every few minutes here in the UK. Why on earth are we not talking about it? Why is it taboo? It's such a painful death, or it's a painful grief, that I really want to get the world talking more about it.
Yes, I think the reality is that some deaths feel like a natural process and are hard to accept because there's a loss, but they're easier to accept because we can see a sense in it. It makes sense. We don't like it. It hurts like hell, but it makes sense. And we even have that expression, senseless death.
Yeah.
It's when it's something that need not have happened in that way, that makes no sense. It's much harder for us to digest that. And I'm using that term deliberately because it's a very physical thing that we feel. And it's an emotional, it's digesting the emotion is harder. And I think it's important that we make that distinction when we're talking about bereavement, because that complicates things. And that's before we even begin to look at the relationship that existed between the person who's bereaved and the person who's died, whether there was a good relationship and they're feeling the loss, or whether there's other very complicated emotions in there, like, you know, the sense that I never got the chance to apologize, or, you know, we never were able to make it up. There's an interruption here, and I never got the chance to. It's difficult enough when we feel that it's natural and that it was inevitable. But when it's sudden, for whatever reason, and there's that interruption, it's much, much harder. So I thought it was very, very good that you actually addressed that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a personal thing for me because my beautiful stepdad died suddenly New Year's Day when I was nursing on a ward. And, you know, I'd seen him in the Christmas, and I look back now and I believe we know when we're dying. I truly do. And when we went to say goodbye, like normal, he hugged me for so long, Anna. And I was like, okay, you know, kind of joking, like, are you dying or something? But he died like a week later. And, you know, for years, I think this is the same with sudden death, whether it's like murder, heart attack, suicide. It's a real complex type of grief because not only is there the loss, the death, there's so many answer questions, you know, and you don't get the answers really, you know, like if you was murdered, you know, the murderer's not going to tell you why. You know, when my dad died, you know, why couldn't you wait till I had my first child? There's all these questions. And what if I'd have done this? What if I'd sent him to the doctors? You know, what if I'd have picked up the phone that day? And you were left with so many questions. So it was really important to me to talk about sudden death because it's one that's affected me. And it's how I changed my nursing career. I worked in acute medicine, so it is sort of like heart attacks, people becoming unwell, often it's like an undiagnosed cancer. But I went to work after Dad died. I went to work in hematology and oncology, and it was kind of a healing process because when you get to the end of your life, sometimes we have that time to, you know, right the wrongs, reach out to people, say I love you, I hate you, you know, I want to see my dog, whatever it is you want to say. And to me, that's how I did my whole career change from like medicine into hematology oncology, because I wanted to be like, does it make a difference if we do have the time to say goodbye? You know, and that is very different, the grief we have if we can say goodbye, if we are there, if we have picked up the phone, if we are by their bedside when they die. And to me, I just wanted to try and cover it as best as I could.
The other thing that I really appreciate about the book is that you are putting death in a context. It's the context of a soul's existence. And the reason I appreciate that is because dealing with clients who are suffering from bereavement, if they have a sense of an afterlife, the healing process is so much easier. It's, however painful it is, I have something to work with. I have somewhere I can take them. When I am dealing with people who are completely closed to even the possibility that there's something more to life, I have nowhere to go. It's so much harder to get them through this process and to help them. We have to do it in a very different way. And so it was good to find a book that deals with bereavement, which actually puts death into a context. I really liked that.
Yeah, thank you. I worked at the end of life for many years as a chemotherapy nurse, and it's so true what you're saying. There was always like these kind of recurring life lessons they used to teach me, and I still live by them now, decades later. And the Diane always used to say, just to connect to something bigger than yourself. I mean, absolutely believe in yourself, absolutely, but always connect to something bigger than yourself. And it is that, you know, whether it's God, Allah, a sense of being, reincarnation, you know, heaven, call it what you will. It is having that sense that this is not the end. And I think that's important for the person that's dying as well as the family that's left behind. I don't think there's so much fear if you know you're kind of returning home. And I don't think it's so sudden, you know, for the people left behind. Like after my beautiful stepdad died, not initially, because I was a mess, let's be honest. But I could sense him around, you know, for many, many years. And it's been like 16 years now, and I can't really sense him around now. But I think when you believe in something's a power greater than you, it's a beautiful thing and a healer in itself.
It is, because the other thing is that you're dealing with the physical loss of the person. But what it does is it gives you permission to not lose the connection.
Yeah.
And that's huge. I remember working with a client who had lost his wife actually quite suddenly. You know, from the diagnosis of cancer to the actual death was only a few weeks. It was one of those. It was really rapid. And he was completely bereft and very much in pieces. And somebody suggested he come and see me. And the first thing I always do is I get a sense of where the beliefs are. And one of the wonderful things that happened was because I had a sense that he was open to this idea, was that I used hypnosis to help him. And this was not a psychic experience, I don't believe, at this stage. I think it was in his imagination to have her back. And it gave him permission to maintain the connection. But then what happened very shortly after that is that he did start having psychic experiences, like her walking into a room and her perfume would suddenly be there. And it culminated one night when he actually saw her, and she just spoke to him very briefly. She just called him by his nickname and was gone. And I think the power that had in healing him and enabling him to continue to live was huge, because it meant that she was not entirely gone. And that's why it's so important that we have a context for death. So tell us a little bit about your experiences as a past life regressionist and the life between life regressionist.
Yeah, so my life between life training was fascinating. So for those of you who don't know, life between life just takes you back to your last incarnation before this one. It's the space in between. So who I was before, I was Shelley Knight, and the little gap in between. So why did I exit that life, and why on earth am I here now? And in that, I learned that I'm here for love and loss, which is quite interesting to a listener, I'm sure. But for me, as the person in this current incarnation, it's helped me so much, because I know that I signed up on a soul level to come down to earth this time to experience love and loss. And I've experienced through other lifetimes as well, but obviously couldn't quite get the lesson, so I'm back. But if I look at my life, obviously I wrote Good Grief, the A to Z approach to modern day grief healing, because I had grief as a nurse, grief in my personal life. But I think without that spirituality sort of telling me and having experiences in it in my life and with my clients, that knowing I'm here to experience love and then lose it, love and then lose it, it really, really helps me. It's a great quote. I'm going to paraphrase it now, from Viktor Frankl, who says that we don't suffer, we don't suffer in suffering alone. We only suffer if there's no meaning. And so if I was just going through life and having these miscarriages, and my dad had died, and all my grandparents have died, and my aunties and my friend, you know, I'd be like probably fearful of living, like who's going to be taken away next? You know, I can't fall in love, I can't trust, and all this kind of thing. But with Viktor Frankl, like in the back of my mind, life between life, I've really learned that actually I signed up for this, and you know, let's see what the lesson is within it. Yes, I still grieve and like ugly cry, snot and everything. I don't just sit there and namaste my way through my grief experiences, but I know there's an ending to my pain. There's a lesson in that suffering. It is, you know, and I mean, Kubler-Ross said it years ago, didn't she? She had like, you know, the 5 stages of grief, but they added in the 6th one, her and David Kessler, which was meaning. And I think that's really important, that, you know, we have to have meaning in life. That's why I love past life regression, because you get to go back, you know, you've already done that death, but, you know, why did you have it in that life? Why do you have things happen to you in this life? And when we have meaning, it just makes sense of why we're here.
Without meaning, there is only chaos, and we can only perceive chaos, and life feels random, which means that we are more likely to be anxious because we think we're going to be hit for no reason at any point. Nothing makes sense. But when you have meaning, then you understand that there is a purpose to this. It's not random. You are not, you know, sometimes with clients, they feel like, why is this happening to me? And it feels like they've got a big target, you know, on them, and that they, you know, they're the victims of life. There's that sense of helplessness, that stuff keeps happening. In reality, when I look at the experiences they've had, they are no better or worse than anybody else's. There are some people whose lives are more challenging, without a shadow of a doubt. But a lot of the time, the people that I'm seeing talking in this way, I think, you know, that's about average, actually. But because they are lost in that sense of meaning, having no meaning, it feels as though there are just these feathers being blown about in the wind and victims of circumstance. And it's part of the healing to come to a point where we can say, no, actually, that's not the case. There is something here that once you grasp it, you can be stronger, and you can be empowered, and you can actually be part of creating your life, and understand that actually you've always been a part of creating your life. How did you get here? So it's a very important thing. So that's the beauty, I think, of past life work and life between life work, is because you can see the story developing.
Yeah, so I've been through love and loss before. I've had like miscarriage, loss in previous lives, lost loved ones in past lives. You know, we just born with this amnesia, aren't we? So we have to go through it all again. But I get comfort from it. I had a lovely podcast guest on recently, and she said the same words you, like, you know, why is this happening to me? But her life changed and her mindset changed when she said, why is it happening for me? And she started to look, and I thought, wow, not why is it happening to me, like that victim thing, like why me, woe is me, why is it happening for me? And that's to me was just like a life changer, and I'd encourage anyone to use that. Why is it happening for me? And it just flips you thinking, hang on, so what can I learn? Why is this? And to me, I just think it's life changing.
It is. I think I was in my mid-20s when I had that particular epiphany where I thought, this keeps happening to me, which means there's too many people pointing in this direction. So clearly, whatever I'm doing is not working. What is it? And, and I had a very long period of feeling very depressed because I knew that I was doing, but I didn't know what it was. So what is it that I'm meant to be? And then at some point, something in me changed. And I thought, oh, was that all? Oh, why didn't I know this years ago? It would have saved myself a whole heap of pain. But it is that a wonderful thing, very liberating when you get that moment where the penny drops.
Yeah, I think for me, like when you're saying, why is this happening to me? You're searching for the negative. As soon as you say, why is it happening for me? Like for is like, like you're pro and you're for it, aren't you? And you just can't search for the negative. Well, I can't, but then I wrote books on positivity. So maybe it's just me, Anna.
No, but I think actually that's in your nature. It is in your nature to come out of the darkness, blinking into the light and asking, oh, okay, which way to go? Let's get out of the darkness. I think that is very much in your nature. It's part of who you are. And if anyone wants to understand more about what we're talking about with regards to Shelley, then I'm going to, on the description box, put a link to the interview we did for Life Astrologer, so you can learn about Shelley's chart and why she is so positive. So I think it is in your nature. And I think sometimes people get into a psychological state of learned helplessness. And that's because they were never given the chance to believe that there was a way out. And when you get into that state, it's very difficult to come out of it. Experiments have been done on, because these studies come from dog behaviorists, and where they've observed dogs that were put in situations where they had no power, no agency, and there was nothing they could do. And then they changed the circumstances where suddenly they did have agency and they did nothing. They behaved as though there were no options. And even though they could see other dogs solving the puzzle and could see the solution being reached, they couldn't do it themselves. So this is a psychological state that we can fall into for lots of different reasons. And it's very important that we are able to find our way out, which is one of the reasons, again, why your book is so lovely, because it's like 101 ways to get out.
It is like that. It's just like, just try something. I mean, most of the tools are like 10 minutes long. That, I know there's listeners today who will spend longer than 10 minutes, looking at other people's lives on Facebook or other social media. It's 10 minutes a day. Just try and meditate on a candle, go for a bath, rearrange your house, declutter something. And it is just, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're only going to get what you got. That's what we say in our family. People are always surprised that their life doesn't change when they haven't made a change. And I get very feisty about positive changes, but it's just like, I get it. I don't accept it, but I do get it, that when people are stuck in that victimhood, they know who they are. We've got that really annoying saying here in the UK, like, better the devil you know, which just keeps you in your comfort zone. It really bugs me, Anna. It's just like, oh, better the devil you know. You do not know that. Live a little. It's going to be far harder to live when you're dead. So just do something different today. People people just say,
Bro,
oh, but I know I'm like the ex of so and so, or I'm the person that lost my job. And it's like, that's one chapter of your entire life story. You know, rewrite the story, try something new. I'm going
I
to stop
think
myself there because I'm going to get all feisty, aren't I?
think that it's very easy to say that and for us to say that, but from a therapist's perspective, it's sometimes, as I said before, you get into that state of helplessness and you really cannot see the way out, and it feels like you haven't got the energy to even try anymore, and the hope has been dashed so many times that now it's a dare to hope again. And so one of my big battles is to get people to dare to hope again. And I think very often just seeing a therapist is a dare to hope,
Mm.
and coming to, and so many times I've had people say, I don't know if you can help me. And it's not that they don't have faith in me, it's that they've come to a point where they don't believe anyone can help them, that they are beyond help. So that's a very important point that we need to understand. But your book I love because it gives people very gentle options to start to begin to attempt to come out and blink into the sunlight.
Yeah, I mean, it does say like in there, talking therapies, medication, going to death cafe, community, you know, support network is highly underrated. I really think it is. You know, that's coming from an only child who loves her own company, but you know, community and getting out is so powerful. You know, and sometimes, like you're saying about the energy, sometimes I know it's overwhelming, you're exhausted, and all your energy might just be getting up to make the phone call to ask for help at GP surgery, or you know, just getting up and brushing your teeth. It all, you know, it's a lot of effort sometimes, but they are gentle tools in there that you can do at home as well. You know, just really gentle ones, like, you know, a little bit of a declutter, looking, you know, one healthy meal a day, hydration, you know, making sure you have 10 minutes on your own every single day. So yeah, they are gentle.
Yeah, and that's what we need in those moments where we are feeling that we actually can't move
Mm.
forward. We need gentle things. So that's something that I very much appreciated, that you included all of these lovely gentle options for people. So the book that we are talking about is Good Grief, and I will make sure that there is a link on the description box. Shelley, if people wanted to learn more about your work and contact you, have you got a website? Is there something that you can, they can, somewhere where they can go?
Yes. So if you head over to shelleyfknight.com, you'll find there's the books, there's the podcasts, there's all the social media links, there's articles I write for magazines, podcasts like this one that I've guested on, as well as being a host. So yes, just head over to the website and click all those buttons.
Wonderful. I'll have the link on the description box for that too. Thank you so much for joining us on In the Light today.
Thank you so much for having me. My absolute pleasure.
Do thank you all for watching, and do remember to subscribe. If you want to ask any questions and make comments, you're welcome to do that. I do reply. And until next time, goodbye.